Welcome everybody to White Cloak's Real Ratings. I apologize for missing out last week. Real life has been kicking my ass recently. As always, this data is the official Nielsen data. This is as legitimate as it gets with no corporate spin on it. The trade-off for that legitimacy is that it comes out about a month late. This is the data for September 19th to September 25th. The number one spot went to Dahmer with an absolutely insane 3.7 billion minutes. That's the third highest week recorded since July when Stranger Things premiered with 5.9 billion minutes. Given the incredible premiere, I fully expect this to hit 5 billion minutes next week, and likely to end up with around 15 billion minutes before falling off the chart. The number two spot went to Cobra Kai with 1.1 billion minutes. That brings the total up to 3.7 billion in the last 3 weeks. I suspect this one will last in the top 10 for a bit, likely getting to around 6 billion minutes before its time is done. The number 3 spot went to House of the Dragon with 1 billion minutes. These numbers don't count all the people watching it on regular HBO cable, so it's extremely telling that House of the Dragon is now beating Rings of Power on streaming. In addition, it's absolutely remarkable the growth that House of the Dragon has had. In House of the Dragon's first full week, it recorded 741 million minutes. In week 5, it's now up to 1 billion minutes. That's a 35% growth rate when typically you see a fairly impressive drop-off. Wheel of Time, for example, had a 30% loss rate from week 2 to the penultimate episode. The number 4 spot went to Rings of Power with 977 million minutes watched. In contrast to House of the Dragon, Rings of Power has been bleeding viewership. In its first full week, the Rings of Power recorded 1.2 billion minutes and is now down to 977 million, good for a 22% drop. The number 5 spot went to Fate, the WINX saga with 675 million minutes. That's brought the show up to 1.2 billion minutes over the course of its 2 weeks. If Netflix can turn a spin-off of the WINX Club into a 2.5 billion minute show, is there anything that it really can't do? The number 6 spot went to El Rey, Vincent Fernandez, with 648 million minutes. Sorry about the Mexican music icon, didn't make the top 10 list in its premiere week, but with 648 million minutes in week 2, it likely will make the list again next week and sneak across the billion minute mark. The number 7 spot went to Andor with 624 million minutes. This is a brutal fall in a premiere week for a Star Wars program. That's the lowest week of a Star Wars premiere since the opening of Disney+. Obi-Wan Kenobi, for example, premiered with 1 billion minutes watched. Andor will likely have another 600 million minute week next week, and then will fall off down into the mid-450s. Disney has to be distraught to see that the Star Wars cash cow isn't producing like it has been historically. The number 8 spot went to Game of Thrones with 586 million minutes. That brings its last 6 weeks up to 3.8 billion minutes. That's good for the 5th most streamed show in the month of September. The number 9 spot went to The Crown with 585 million minutes. The Crown has been in a groove since the death of Queen Elizabeth. Over the last 3 weeks, the show's up to 1.7 billion minutes, which has to make Netflix very happy leading up to a release of the new season on November 9th. The number 10 spot went to The Handmaid's Tale with 535 million minutes. Over the last 2 weeks, that's up to 1.1 billion minutes. For a show that was the talk of the town back when it first premiered, the Hulu drama seems to have fully phased out of public interest. It'll be interesting to see whether or not it will continue to make the top 10 lists, and I suspect that it will not. The number 11 spot went to The Great British Bake Off with 442 million minutes. Season 13 kicked off on the BBC, which led to a bunch of people heading back to Netflix for rewatches. The number 12 spot went to Stranger Things, which remains on the list. I know I've said this the last couple of weeks, but I swear I think this is the last week Stranger Things will be on the chart. With 24.3 billion minutes since July 27th, it's been an unparalleled streaming success. The big takeaway from this week is that Dahmer is going to be a juggernaut. The contrast between this one and the Rings of Power demonstrates that there is still a massive difference in streaming reach between Netflix and all the other streaming platforms. The next big takeaway is that House of the Dragon seems to have officially defeated Rings of Power. I suspect House of the Dragon will win again next week, then Rings of Power will have a bump for its penultimate and finale episodes, and then based on the growth from House of the Dragon, it seems like it's a lock that it will dominate its own finale weeks, and will also do extremely well in the hold weeks. The last takeaway is that She-Hulk once again failed to make the top 10. Disney has to be praying that people just don't like She-Hulk and not that there's serious burnout on Marvel, considering they're getting ready to roll out a $200 million Black Panther movie without Chadwick Boseman. Thank you everybody for listening. Please like, comment, and subscribe.